Supervisor Pritchard, are you on?
Once,
I don't see him.
and it becomes green, and then you just, well, you don't have to put it with.
Supervisor Franson, are you on?
Yes, please, and thank you so much for helping me.
Sure.
I'll bring it back when you're
Yep,
done.
right ahead.
Oh, smokes. You all right over there? All right, we're gonna call meeting to order.
Got an extra one there? Thank you, boss lady.
Any discussion on the minute? Aye. Chairman. Do any committee members have any conflicts of interest with any matters on this agenda? I don't know. That's your agenda's different. Right. All right, we're gonna say no one has any conflicts of interest. Are there any public comments? Someone trying to make a public comment? All right.
Maybe we should tell people that we can hear everything.
Might just be doing dishes. It don't.
Yeah,
Mute yourself. All right, as long as she can hear us, I guess. Are there any supervisors not seated as committee members that would like to give us any information? Not. All right, we're ready for some reports and presentations. Who's up? World Architect.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we've asked World Architects to come and present their preliminary findings. They were asked last year to look at the needs of Polk County facilities. And I was
Richard, do you have your mic on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Noise going on there.
It's gone away now, I think.
Okay.
Can someone talk to them? Someone, Mike, can you guys hear us? I'm going to tell you, Fran and Mike, you guys, we got full screen. Not too bad.
Pardon me, I think I'm going to dial in to have better audio. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So, sorry for the delay. World Architects are here to talk about the plans. I will say this, the emphasis that we placed is, let's look at the structure, what things need to be done, not architecturally, but mechanically and safety-wise and so on. And obviously part of it will be communication and audio-visual system in our new boardroom, right? But they're going to give just a preliminary analysis of some of their findings and things that we've kind of whittled down to.
Is this just the boardroom?
No, this is the entire building.
That's joking.
Very good. I'll let you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Joel Dunning. I'm a partner at Wolf.
All right. I'm Joel Dunning. I'm a partner at World Architects and Engineers. With me is Melissa Stein, who is an associate in our office. And we want to give you a quick, probably about 15, 20-minute update on our findings of our space needs and facility analysis study. If you can advance to the next slide. Quick agenda of, we're going to go over the study objectives, the guiding principles that were set for us, review the facility conditions we found, review the space needs we found, and then quickly go over the recommendation that we're putting forward in this report. I do want to emphasize that as far as we're concerned, it's still a draft report, and this is an update to this committee, and we're happy to take any feedback and continue to modify the report as needed. I like to overview instead of waiting for the summary at the end, just so that you guys know what we're going to be getting at, what we're going to be highlighting. The key points of our recommendation are to address infrastructure needs in the building, as Vince mentioned, the mechanical, the electrical infrastructure that's nearing the end of its life or failing should be addressed right away. Creation of a master plan for space needs, and then implementation of high-impact customer service and staff efficiency strategies. And then the last thing that I'll mention is leaving the old jail as is for now, and we'll get into that at the end. Next slide. So part of our process is to work with a core group of staff and leaders in every one of our projects to start the project off with understanding what are the real objectives people want to achieve, where should we be aiming for, and we summarize that in here 7 statements that we call guiding principles. It kind of guide the, once we get to the solution portion of this process, they guide what the solution should be solving. Investments should be, number 1, investments should be fiscally responsible and reflect the county's values. Number 2, enhance customer experience by becoming citizen-centered. Number 3, capture divisional efficiencies to improve functional flow and productivity. Number 4, upgrade safety and security around and throughout the building. 5, plan for user-friendly working, gathering, and meeting spaces that incorporate upgraded technology. Number 6, improve productivity, recruitment, retention, and customer service through infrastructure operational efficiencies. And number 7, consider long-term operational and space needs of the county. So we're going to jump into the condition assessment first, and I'll let Melissa handle that.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting us come here today to discuss this with you of what we've been working on. One of the steps that we do in the overall master planning is actually look at your existing infrastructure of your buildings that you have. We look at, roofs, the building itself, the structure, mechanical systems, electrical systems, everything that makes the building what it is from an infrastructure standpoint. And we look at life cycles and life safety things to really figure out what are some of the needs or deficiencies currently. And so we have a couple lists. We have them separated as general systems, mechanical systems, electrical, and then technology. I'm not going to go word by word through each piece of it, but the big components that we found, at least from the general system standpoint, would be ADA upgrades, upgrading your toilet fixtures and your toilet facilities, along with your hand railings and some of the stairwells. The building, at least the 74 version of the building, is very deficient in the ADA we also did look at windows as when we look at those compared to the existing wall infrastructure, we didn't think that it was a great buyback when you think of the efficiency that it would have. Go to the next slide. Thank you. The next piece we took a look at was mechanical systems. There is essentially two systems in these buildings right now, one for the 74 version of the building, and then the other one for the 2004 version. We believe that when we looked at all the systems, the 74 building is, when we looked at, the boilers, the air handling, the systems that are in here, they're really past their life expectancy and really need to be replaced. When we looked at the 04 side of the building, for the most part, there's a few things that are nearing their life cycle, but really it's in pretty good condition. And so we would really recommend kind of replacing everything on the 74 version of the building here. And then electrical systems. Really, when we took a look at it, you have a lot of aging equipment, really the distribution in some of your switch panels. And so we would recommend kind of reusing or replacing those as well. When we look at efficiency, the existing building here, it has all T8 fluorescent lights. So when we look at efficiency, really upgrading those to LED would be something we would recommend, but it can be something that gets deferred depending on where we are budget-wise. And then the next piece that we did take a look at was technology. One of our biggest recommendations here would be just kind of recabling everything, upgrading it at standard clean for the county.
So quick summary, I guess the 74 building is old and things are getting at the end of its life cycle. The 2004 is still in pretty good shape. So going on to the space needs, well, we had a team of engineers and architects walk through the building to look at the condition. Our architectural team worked with all the different departments that are in the complex. And we started off with sending out surveys to get them thinking about what they need in their space, how their operations function. We sat down, met with every department, asked some leading questions and really got them to think about how they might change. I think it's been really a fascinating process that this is the only space needs study that we've ever done that has had a pandemic in the middle of it that forced a whole lot of operational change to people. We're often pressing people to say, will you ever be able to work remotely from home and eliminate space needs at the office? And people in the middle of the process did all of a sudden realize that it was possible to do that. But even with some of the future projections and some of the changed operations, the great story here is that the size that the building exists today really provides the space that all the departments foresee needing for the 20-year plan that everyone envisioned. And we went through and summarized them by all the departments. This is the General Government Division and Environmental Services. The next slide shows the community services and then some independent unassigned groups like UW Extension, ADRC, and conference rooms and other building infrastructure. The bottom line is really it never happens in our world, and it's really kind of amazing. It's actually third from the bottom, usable area ended up totaling up within within 300 square feet of what's needed in the right column versus what you have on the left column. And that really becomes negligible when we look at building wall thickness and stairs and elevators getting added in that last 20%. That 200 square foot is the size of a small conference room, is the only difference. So the county is set up great. You have all the square footage you need. What we did find out, though, is that there are several departments that could provide better customer service or could provide, have more efficiency in staffing if they were located in different spots. So we have a chart here that really just itemizes the different divisions that are here on campus and highlights a couple of moves that we think that the county ought to think big picture about doing. In the general government division, it looks at moving from the main level up to the upper level. And it looks at moving CJCC up from the upper level down to the main level, more embedded with the community services where they have a stronger collaboration. And then they could utilize the common reception for community services. Similarly, county clerk being near the rest of general government, there might be some staffing efficiencies in having all of general government co-located, maybe a single reception for all of general government, single or shared administrative functions as well. No real change overall for the for floor levels for the environmental services division, but we could imagine that maybe land information or the land and water resources might move to become more contiguous, maybe swapping with the treasurer so that you have all three of those divisions right together and you could create a common central customer service point where again you could achieve some staff efficiencies as well as instead of customers going from one department to another, which staff do a really good job of escorting customers between those three different departments. It could be all at one common waiting area counter. The last one, the behavioral health down in the community services group, they don't really have a need to move to the lower level, but volunteered to do so to make room for the ADRC and veteran services to move up. Those are two groups that have probably the highest percentage of clientele with mobility issues. And as the county has transitioned to having a single public access on the south entry on the main level, they used to have great convenience with that east lower level entry, but now their customers are coming in for safety and for COVID response through the south main entry. And it means walking deeper into the building and then using the elevators to get down. If they moved up to the upper level, it would be better convenience, better customer service for those people who tend to have more mobility issues. And also similar to make room on this main level, we're considering moving this boardroom up to the upstairs. That gives great proximity to the rest of the general or the administration and general government, and also frees up that customer service space on this first floor. Also allows you to develop a newer, higher tech boardroom while you're still in one of the old courtrooms, while you're still using this until that new one is developed. So those are the space moves. A lot of those don't take necessarily remodeling, they're just moves. Some of them might take some remodeling to accomplish. So in summary, the recommendation, looking at the facility maintenance recommendations, you can see the first 2/3 of the list are all systems in the 1974 building, which is this older, south portion, 3-story. The roof replacement, ADA toilet, stair and elevator upgrades, the chilled water system, the boiler plant replacement, the whole air handling ventilation system, domestic water, the pipes are starting to leak. Heavy on the mechanical, the electrical distribution panels that Melissa mentioned, update the interior lighting to LED, save energy with occupancy controls. Data cabling in this portion of the building is pretty old, and while we're in walls and in ceilings, might as well update that. The building automation system overall doesn't allow a lot of flexibility for scheduling or temperature control, so recommendation to upgrade that. Water softeners, water heaters, fire alarm panel is near the end of its life. The sum of all of these items at the bottom, we estimate a $5.9 million project cost. The construction cost is about 80% of that, but that factors in a little bit of extra for contingencies for unforeseen conditions that haven't gotten into the full engineering yet, and other miscellaneous project costs that go along with some of these items. I do want to mention just briefly in our report, there's another $2.5 million worth of items that our team found, but we're not suggesting implementing those at this time. We think, like the windows were mentioned, that's another $500,000 or so that, I think it's less than that, 350, that could be done, but we don't see the return on investment. We don't see the problem with window leaks right now or failing seals or other things like that. So there's another $2.5 million that could be invested in this building in the campus, but we think it can be deferred till later. So the next page, the customer and staff efficiency recommendations. If we looked at implementing all of those moves of the different floor levels and assume that maybe 3/4 of them require some remodeling to accommodate those moves, then we get at about a $2 million project cost, about $1.6 million in construction to accommodate all of those moves, which brings the total recommended project cost. It's ideal. Most all the moves are in this building, and so while ceilings are torn apart, while the boilers, while the air handling, all those things are being done, do it at once. That results in a recommended total project of about $7.9 million. So we flew through that pretty quickly to try and minimize our presentation, and we want to open it up to any questions that the committee might have.
What's wrong with the existing generator? Is it just old or it's not working? Or?
It is old. Yep, it is working. We haven't had reports of it not failing, but a backup power generator is one of those things that you don't want to have not start. And I believe it's the same vintage as the jail, so it's getting close to 50 years old, I believe. One thing I didn't touch on while you're getting to that page is the, I mentioned at the beginning, our recommendation is don't touch the old jail. We feel that there aren't major infrastructure needs to the building, and it's pretty cheap storage to continue to maintain it. Go back to a couple more forward. Forward, not back. So we're recommending for now keep the jail as that asset for storage. If at some point a major infrastructure need does come up, maybe instead of replacing air handling or maybe instead of replacing major components of the jail, maybe at that time the county thinks about demolishing it. But for the time being, it's great, cheap storage. There's not a need for the space because the 2004 and the 74 building, as I mentioned, provide all the space the county needs. So unless a new function comes up that the county wants to house, there's no need to do any updates or remodeling. So that's our recommendation for the old jail for now.
What's wrong with the ADA toilet that we have? We have them in all the stalls, I see. That's everyone's.
So the ADA, so ADA compliance, they actually don't meet ADA at the moment.
We're talking about the bathrooms that are just out front here.
Yep. So you might have like a handicap stall, but now with new codes, if you have 2 stalls, you have to have one of them has to be ambulatory, and you have to have an ADA piece of them. And with this new 2020 code, some of those have changed and gotten a little more restrictive on what you can do. And so any major renovation would automatically indicate a replacement of the toilets. So
you would.
You will.
Mm-hmm. You would add room, increase the size of those.
Sure. Is there an elevator up there?
So the elevator is simply a control panel. It's a couple $1,000 to make it so that the hall buttons and the control panel inside the elevator have braille and are at the right height and are compliant with ADA. The stairs are simply the guardrails and handrails are not compliant right now. So it's replacing the guardrails and handrails, leaving the stair treads as is.
Water stoppers.
We believe that some of the domestic water problems with piping are because of a high manganese level in the water, and adding a water softener will help alleviate that problem and alleviate maintenance in the future.
That would be not what it cost. Temperatures are open to that anyway, you know. It's unmuted. You have any questions, Mike?
No.
What are we using this document for? Yes. So we got a laundry list of what people want.
Actually, yeah,
And I'll just throw my general question out there. It's helpful to see the laundry list. I mean, for me, I would want, instead of just a big round number, I'd want to see everything itemized out. Even round numbers are fine. And then the other question I'd always have is, are these, show us a phasing of these items? I mean, obviously some things you can't phase, some have to be all done together. I'd like to see a phasing flow chart to this. And then I would also like to see that breakdown and I'd also like to know when we have a list like this at some point, whether it's now or later, just because we're non-compliant on some things, the goal isn't to make the whole building compliant. We're not required by law to make it all compliant. The other thing is, when you talk about, like Supervisor Masters talked about the bathrooms, yeah, clearly you have to blow out some walls, and it's basically a new bathroom. It's not just moving a stall panel. Correct. So, without having a plan in front of us, and maybe that wasn't your scope of work, but I would like to see the presentation done with a plan, even if it was just highlighted so people could understand this bathroom is this big, we're going to move it to this corner, or we're going to move it to, even if it's just your guys' ideas, not that we're going into the next phase of design work yet, but to me, I would hope that you guys would furnish us those documents so we could see them.
Yep. And I do want to just mention to the committee that there is a 50-page report that we've produced and turned over to administration. We do have this is even a summary, but we have it. We just didn't want to go over every line. We're not need to go over every line, so we can look at it.
yeah.
And we have drawings then.
There are some concepts for how some of the departments might move.
So you already got that.
Yes.
Is that in this whole setup?
Yes.
So everything you've done, we've got it.
Yeah.
And we haven't had it get to us yet.
And I would say the presentation to us, we've gone through a couple of phases here. And in fact, I would say of this amount, very good questions are being asked, but we've already reduced that about $4 million by asking those questions of what needs to be done, why, what can be deferred, and what not.
So the questions we ask, we can reduce it another $1 million probably.
Maybe
That's our goal.
Maybe. And I will say this, I would say the goal is obviously to have the building brought up to certain codes and make us more customer-centric and efficient and safe, and productive. But I will say maybe we should have done the financial aspect of this first, because when you think about the strategy that was developed 7-8 years ago to make sure that we as Polk County are not caught unaware by some emerging issue that says, whoops, now we've got to take multiple millions of dollars to fix something. This is a capital improvement plan that was developed so that when our buildings do reach their end, which we have, I think what they expect buildings like this to last, is it 40 years before a major renovation, then we're on a 46 year. So it's just looking ahead to say this is our plan, making sure that our capital improvements are taken care of without doing anything silly, only what's needed, but yet we are able to borrow that money in a way that keeps our levy untouched, and taxpayers the same.
Right, and the key you're looking for committees like us to do is to confirm what's needed. That's the magic word, right? What's needed.
I think to get your sense, yeah, to get buy-in and say, yeah, that makes sense or that doesn't make sense.
So this presentation certainly doesn't give me an ability to say what's needed. Not for me, I couldn't say.
No, but
Oh, now I know what's needed. Just because someone put it on a piece of paper and just did this presentation, that I have no comfort level to say, yeah, let's keep moving forward. I couldn't vote to move forward.
no. Preliminary look here based on their professional assessment, input from Mo and the rest of us about what is needed. And that's why we've taken the time to say, no, that's not as necessary now, and move that down the road. And these are the things that we think are important. The heating and air conditioning, the electrical. You think about the savings we've had in the IT department over the past 10, 15 years. Well, there's a price to pay for that. Now we're at the point where we're so far behind, we have to really make some investments there.
Any more questions?
Mike Pritchard? Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was one of the people advocating for dealing with climate change. And has anyone looked at what would be involved in solar heating for the government center?
I think the question was, do we look at solar heating?
Has anyone looked at solar heating for the government center and what the long-term costs or cost savings might be?
I think that investigation is part of the next step. We have speculated that there might be, by taking on a larger project that includes all of the mechanical, the heating, the cooling, the ventilation, the building automation system all at once, there is an opportunity to change over from the more traditional systems to something that's more efficient, like a heat pump, geothermal well field. That really makes sense when you're doing all of those systems at once. If you're just replacing the boilers and then waiting a couple of years to do the chillers and the ventilation, it doesn't necessarily make any sense to change from the traditional system you have now. But I think the exploration of the paybacks is part of future design phases. We know from the thumb that a change to something like that might be a 10-year payback, but this was more of a high-level analysis.
This is just science.
Okay, thank you. And I just think we could be a leader on some of these when the opportunity comes up. The other one on the jail, the last I had heard was that we needed that space, and now I'm hearing we don't need the space. But is there a reason that we demolish it and not just let it sit there?
From my perspective, the storage, most of the entire lower level is used for cost-effective storage right now, and the or rent storage space off-site would be prohibitive. Before the operational cost is something, the utilities to heat and cool the building is something, but you're talking maintenance cost $3,000 for storage.
Okay.
So in my mind, it's in the best interest of the county to continue to pay.
And I think given the economies, given the financial aspect of this situation, our idea is to use that money as wisely as possible and build for the future, implement what's needed now as opposed to tearing something down. And it just intuitively, it made sense for us to think about proactive improvements.
The other piece is it's,
So this is what we paid for to get, right? So you guys are kind of saying, this is what you got, we did our job. And now what's the next step?
Well, the next step would be to, we're going to look at the financial ramifications and look at our bonding process and the strategy we have. And then we would refine this with more feedback from supervisors and staff that are involved, and come to a final drawing or plan, and then come to an agreement.
Pardon me, I have no sound and I can only see Mike Pritchard.
Yeah, I understand your point. I wouldn't characterize it as we scaled it down as much as we said what things, there are projects on here that would be nice, so to speak.
I understand. I think you guys should just, if staff has seen a bunch of stuff and staff has decided to say, this is what we're going to present, I would like to see what staff scaled down on. We paid for something, let's see it all. That's what I'd like to see.
all those other items are in the report.
They're all in there.
So, and it's categorized as what's recommended versus what could be deferred.
Okay, so it's all there.
Yep.
Okay, that's all I wanted to make sure it's all there.
Some of the biggest items that were deferred are the windows, biggest ticket items. The windows, one item that came up as a deficiency in the building, but is not reflected is fire sprinklers throughout everything. And we don't feel that's a necessary cost to spend $800,000 or so when the county has existed to date. There's no code mandate to retrofit. So those are the types of things that were deferred. It wasn't
What about like the mechanical systems and some of these big items that, when you say, hey, I got this much in mechanical or boiler, are you guys putting dollars into that budget for removing ductwork and replacing ductwork? Or are you saying you're tying into existing? Are you starting over from scratch on some items in this budget or not? Is that detail in the report?
The level of detail about whether ductwork is being reused or not probably is not in the report. Our general approach to pricing is that because we can't get above the ceiling and look at every piece of ductwork in a study like this, we'll put in the pricing the concern of, yes, it's replacing everything, but usually when we get to a design process or when a county gets to a design process, there is more field observation and field verification, and it's not just, well, we have the budget, let's replace it. It's you know, we try and save
what
money.
numbers is what you're basing this off of.
Right.
On new systems.
Correct.
Because it goes to Mike Pritchard's question about solar, and that's where I'm like, if we're moving 20% of the walls, or are we moving 50% of the walls with this remodeling? I know the exterior walls are not being, you know, the footprint staying. Can you give us a sense of scope of the amount of remodeling these floors are gonna undergo?
Yep, so we estimated the whole campus, excluding the jail, the two occupied buildings, the 74 and 2004 building, are about 87,000 square feet. And that $2 million covers about 16,000 square feet of remodeling. So about 20% of the area.
So what's the dollar per square foot that you guys allow for that?
So that, its construction cost $75 a square foot. And usually we'd actually do it higher, but because we have the mechanical, electrical upgrades budgeted separately, that's really just finishes and walls and things like that, at 75 a square foot.
And about how many square feet are you saying needs to be remodeled?
So we're budgeting about 16,000.
16,000 square feet.
Yep.
Okay.
Is that actually 20,000?
Does it have the square
Yes,
footage?
It does.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so it's all there.
Just for what's probably not in the report, is that 16,000 square feet probably upper level, includes the boardroom, county clerk, maybe some reconfiguration of space.
Sure.
And about 4,000 down on this level to customer service counter.
So that's okay. You got numbers in different areas. It's
Yep.
still- Gotcha.
No touching of the 2004 building, no touching down in the lower level.
And no outside site work involved in these budgets at all, any type of utilities or changes to things?
No, we had identified that some site lighting could be improved and some of the parking lots could be repaired. It's not in the budget. Those two items are things that I think Mo thought they could be handled by operational costs.
But they are indicated in the report. There's a separate section, so we called out like what we observed, what we believed was damaged, and what the unit prices were for those pieces. And then in the
Good questions, though.
in the report as well, it doesn't just say, oh, we observed the roof and this is our recommendation. It actually indicates like what we observed, why we believe that it should be replaced, or what we were seeing. And so it gives you some of that why behind the recommendation for some of these items.
And where is the report at?
Chad and Vince and Mo have it.
We got it this morning. I'll have the clerk, we can make copies. We'll have to give copies because of the size, we won't be able to email. Okay. We can make copies.
Supervisor Duncanson has hand raised for about 10 minutes.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
I just had a question if the staff was interviewed at all about or department heads about the needs of their department.
Yes, there were. That was an integral part of our process for the space needs. Every department got, we sent out a survey first to get them thinking about it, and then followed an interview face to face.
Sounds great. Just asking, I work at a new $7 million building. Nobody talked to the staff, and we still don't have a decent place to hold an election. Or not a very good place, let's put it that way. Also, is this PowerPoint available on the website, or can it be emailed to us?
We can make it available on the website if Vince directs me to, and I can email it to all the supervisors. The report is too large to email, so we'll have to print that one.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are we good with this portion?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to reading.
Yes.
Can I grab this?
Yeah. Okay.
Who's giving us the bonding report?
The comment, Chair, if I could just throw one comment. So I guess as a chair too, that when we get presentations, it should be nice to have the information before the presentation. We've always kind of complained about that. Instead of getting presentation, they will send you everything later. I would appreciate if I could have it. But it's just, I know we always ask for it and we never get it, but just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, we probably could have if they just got it today, we probably could have got it and put the presentation on for next month too.
It's nice to make notes on it and go through it. It's not good.
Well, I would recommend just keeping it on the agenda. Let's go through it. We'll just individuals. Talk it up, have any questions, respond back to them, or respond back to us.
So are we approved, sir, to move doing a presentation regarding the bonding?
If I may, no, because I think this is a strategy that has been put in place and has worked very well for this county. And we're coming to that point now where we're ready to do this once again, and it's time. And what we wanted, this was a general, not so much about the rebuilding, it's more about the process of the bonding. So some new supervisors would want to see our strategy. Some of you might want a refresher on what we've done in the past and what we can do going forward and why. And it shows us the flexible options we have. So that's why we've asked the PMA representative to come here and kind of lay this out to us. And you can see where a project like this space analysis would fit in and where other projects, capital related projects, might fit in that the board deems a priority.
All right, we'll start the presentation.
This is Brian Della. He's a bonding rep from PMA, handles our investments. And what Brian did is, many of you may recall, some of you are new, so you're not aware. Many years ago, Dana and Andrea designed a bonding plan that was a 10-year recurring bonding plan where we could bond, keep our debt at a set level, and our payments were the same. We kept a consistent level. The millage rate didn't have to go up, those kind of things. And the long-term goal was capital upgrades, facility upkeep, strategic planning, implementation, that kind of stuff. So what Brian has prepared is an example of our capacity. It's also an explanation of how bonding works, kind of a history of our bonding, and then there's bondings available, it's kind of an overview.
Well, good to be here. Yeah, so hopefully this is kind of a short presentation, but hopefully it'll be a reference for you in the future. What have we bonded for in the past? What are some rules about bonding? How's the process work? And then, what's really our debt service? How much debt do we have outstanding? What kind of projects are we looking to finance and, in round numbers? And can we afford it? And what will be the impact on the debt service levy? So here on the first page is a list of all of the county's debt issues since 2000. And what you'll see is that back in 2001, 2002, there was a lot of debt issued for a justice center, new justice center, new adult development center, and a renovation of the human services and public health office building. Okay, so that was your big bonding back in the day. You got some really new buildings out of it. A couple smaller issues after that. There was an issue to pay off your Wisconsin retirement service liability. Everyone got one back in 2003 or so. Everyone got here's what you owe, we're a little underfunded, which was really a prudent thing to do, and that's why we're essentially 100% funded today and the envy of most of the country. And you also financed a communication system back in 2005. And of course, there's some refinancings in there for interest savings. And those arrows showed how they were refinanced over time. And the last issue that you did was in 2017. And that was a slightly different process, but that refinanced the last little bit of your highway facility. And I'm sorry, it included new money to finance a new highway facility, and it refunded the last handful of maturities associated with those early Justice Center and Adult Development Center borrowings.
So when we borrowed,
yeah.
We borrowed from a bank.
That's exactly right, and that's the next slide. So what the next slide, like my setup man here, all the deals you've done from 2001 through 2012 were what I would call bond capital markets debt issues. Okay, that is the most common way to finance anything large. However, in the second thing it says a bank loan, that's for something small. You probably don't need me for $500,000 or something. But a direct placement, that's what you did in 2017, and those have become more common. In other words, banks have funds they want to put to work. They're a little more willing to allow flexible terms, and there are times when issuers, such as the county, would just want to go to a bank and do a deal. It's a good value for you to go directly to a bank. I mean, we can talk about the trade-offs, and these trade-offs change over time. But you can imagine you might pay a little higher interest rate, but you get a lot more flexibility, and you avoid a lot of the fixed costs of a bonding issue. So, pros and cons: how long you're borrowing, what you're borrowing for. How many millions, it changes the value proposition of each of these options. And that's what we help you do. We act as your financial advisor, and we provide guidance. And, we're agnostic on what you choose to do. We're just here to provide advice and act in your best interest. So the next slide just mentions a little primer. You can issue notes or you can issue bonds. Notes are 10 years and less, and they're a little less restrictive. State statute has less restrictions. And bonds are, up to 20 years, we're at 11 to 20. So they have more restrictions, and this just kind of highlights a couple of them. But you're probably going to do notes, and you can do notes, so that's great for the foreseeable future, based on what we know. Following slide, this is just goes over the typical resolutions for a general obligation bond issue. So notes could be a little less restrictive, or would be a little less restrictive. But the idea is there's usually on these big projects, and I think we're kind of talking about a larger project here with this remodeling. There's generally some sort of the board commits to moving forward with the project. Architects, please move forward. Staff, please move forward. Financial advisor, engineers, all that stuff, please move forward. And you're kind of committing. You're essentially committing to the project. You're not legally doing it, but this is important because of the next thing. To borrow money, you need a affirmative vote of the members elect. So you need 12 affirmative votes. So that project vote, if you get 10, you probably don't want to go forward with it. In your case, because you have 15 supervisors. So that's kind of a way to set the stage before you spend any more money, to get people on the record to say, yes, you can infer from my vote that I'm ready to vote the same for the initial borrowing resolution. Now, usually that just authorizes the borrowing conceptually, and then you oftentimes have to have a separate resolution that says, okay, we authorize $9 million for the project, but maybe we're going to borrow 4.5 1 year and 4.5 the next. So those are those set sail resolutions that really put what you've authorized into action. That's a set sail. And then the award resolution. When when we're working, maybe if it's a competitive, we're collecting bids, or there's some negotiations with a private lender, a private bank, or I guess all banks are private, a bank. That's the award resolution is, we'll pay this much at this interest rate, you get the money on this date, all the details are in there. That's the award resolution. So, that's for a bond issue. That's the most restrictive. Notes could maybe streamline this by a resolution or two, but that's kind of how the process works on these larger issues, or certainly for bonding. Reimbursement, one really small thing, this is just, you want to spend some general fund money, and you're maybe fronting certain expenses. Your bond's not coming in till August, you're spending money in May. You do a reimbursement resolution that says, hey, the general fund's going to loan you $500,000 for this project, but we expect to get that $500,000 back when the bond proceeds come in. And that's how you get reimbursed. Our credit rating, just touch on this, right? It's a document for your reference. the way a credit rating works is if you're issuing capital market debt, bonding, you would essentially, the question before you, should we get a credit rating? Okay? In a credit ratings, you're going to pay a credit rating agency to rate your debt. Okay? Now the question is it a good value? And the answer is almost always yes, and especially for your county, because you have most recently been rated as AA3 by Moody's. So, so in other words, even though you haven't borrowed since 2012, they kept a rating on some of your debt. So it was most recently reaffirmed in 16. So in 2016, Moody's looked at you and said you're a AA3. So, so what I'm going to tell you is that if you're having such a strong AA range, if you're in the AA range, and even if you're in the single A range, but especially if you're in the AA range and on a larger deal, on a capital market deal, the rating pays for itself because you're going to get lower interest rates because investors, are value that rating. And it's Wisconsin general obligation paper bonds, and with a certain rating are pretty close to a commodity, kind of plain vanilla, so that we kind of know where they're going to price, because there's a lot of that stuff out there, and and for those counties that don't have any hair or anything unusual, they should price very similarly. So this is just a reference slide. Rating, capital markets, you'll want to get one, but sometimes, and that's a potential money saving thing. If you go to a bank, like let's say we did a deal in the capital markets, and then a year later you're going out for a smaller amount, maybe a direct placement would be okay, because the lender, they'll do their own credit, but they're like, well, we just saw these guys, they just got rated, we feel comfortable with their financial situation. So it's it can be helpful. Timing matters, but so definitely it would be a good idea if you're going to the capital markets to get a rating.
So in terms of the rating and how many it costs money to get a bond rating, obviously. We had a bond rating 4 years ago or whatever. But we had a bank rating for a bank credit check or whatever the bank can borrow. Is there such a difference between the percentage of interest and principal versus a bond?
Well,
how is that a bond going to make it more than a regular bank interest rate versus a bond?
Well, I guess I would say this. Now we're narrowing down. This answer is going to be a little narrow because I'll narrow it to you. If you're going to borrow $10 million over 10 years, general obligation debt, and you don't really need to you don't feel like there's anything special about this. You don't need the right to prepay it tomorrow or next year. You say, we'll issue 10-year notes. We can only refinance the last 2 years. It's going to be a very, very high probability that you're going to get a lower cost of financing in the capital markets. I mean, it's some extra work. It's more formal. But the larger the dollar and the longer the longer the final maturity is, the more value every bit of interest rate reduction is. Like in other words, if this was a 1-year loan and 2 versus 2.5%, I mean, that's not really a lot of dollars on $1 million or something. I mean, we're going to fight for it, but I mean, in the big picture, it's not a lot. But the larger you're borrowing for a longer period of time, the more interest rate, the more interest you pay. It's kind of like a mortgage. People refinance their mortgage when it goes down 0.5%. It's like a big deal. When you're young, you're getting that 30-year mortgage. But so think of it like that. So it depends how banks. It's just interesting. Banks are not. The capital markets are pretty steady and stable, and we know what to expect from them. I mean, banks come and go with how aggressive they are on their bids. They got a lot of bank deposits. I guess they want to put put more money to work on these investments. If they sort of have less, or risk tolerance is different, they have too much municipal paper. I mean, they might not be there for you. But when they are, it's great. And when they're not, capital markets are a great answer. Especially in Wisconsin, right? Because you're double A rated, presumably. So the last thing, and I think this is, so that's a great history, and hopefully, you just reference that from time to time. But the last thing I brought is an attachment, I just like attach it to this PDF. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a page here with this, I forgot about that. I put together an example projection, okay? And what was the projection based on? Well, I want to keep your borrowing, based on the amount that we're talking about borrowing, no major projects, I mean big but not massive. We'll keep the borrowing to 10 years, and we're going to set a target that your debt service in any given year doesn't exceed $2.8 million. Okay? And so what did that was our goal, you work within these parameters. What were the contemplated projects? So what did we put in this debt projection? We took your existing debt. We added $6 million next year for phase 1 government center facilities update. The following year, in 22, we added $2 million to finish that project along with some IT work. So that's $8 million for that, the total government center update. And then we asked ourselves, how much could the county borrow on an annual basis on average, and still be within this $2.8 million, where your annual payment stays right where it is right now, $2.8 million. And I did it a couple different ways, but we came up with, you could borrow about $2.4 million a year, even after you borrow this $8 million over the 2 years. You could then, in perpetuity, basically still borrow $2.4 million a year on average. So it might be $2.4 million one year. It could be, if you do 3.5 one year, then it got to be a little lower the next year. Or you could double up and do $5 million one year and 0 the next year. But on average, you could borrow $2.4 million a year for other projects, even after you borrow this $8 million for the facilities, and you would not increase your debt service levy above the existing $2.8 million. So, what follows is a principal and interest schedules for these borrowings, and you can see, and there's nothing magic about it, and we can do. You change the assumption, we change the numbers, right? But this hopefully just shows you that you essentially, if you are willing to levy $2.8 million a year, you can do the facilities, and you can borrow on a regular basis for all these other projects. Now, whatever they turn out to be.
A quick question on that $2.8 million. You're saying we can levy. How much are we currently levying?
$2.8 million.
So you're just saying so the simple thing you're laying out is you say we can borrow $6 or $8 million over the next couple of years, and then you can additionally borrow how much every year?
$2.4 million.
Forever.
Yes.
While you're paying that off and it wouldn't change our levy.
Yes.
Dollars.
So Supervisor Nelson, over here,
all that, yeah.
It's on a farm versus the bank.
here's your mill rates.
Yeah.
Here's your present mill rate. And you got the mill rates going out. The mill rate actually.
I just have one copy.
No, that's okay.
And I'm sorry. I'm just my thought was that you'd have these
after you just heard me whine about the last presentation, right?
Well, I honestly didn't know if you had iPads or if they'd be on the screen, but but it's included here for you to look at. But if you just scroll out,
I can kind of maybe walk over there. And
sorry, Chad.
So these numbers you can't see. I can't even see them. Okay.
Yeah.
But I can show you this. Your existing debt is green. It's 2.8 million is your payment.
Yeah.
Your existing debt is green. So this is this green debt. These are your payments. 20, you pay 2.8 million. 21, you pay almost 2.8. Then it drops off. But because it drops off quickly, there's room for a 6 million, another 2, and a 2.4. Yeah, it's 2.3. Let's go 2.4 every year. 327, right? And you can see this is what your bogey is. Your 2.8 million, your bogey here, this red line. You can see I've just filled up the debt service to hit that bogey. And then it goes down by $280,000 a year for 10 years. So what that, to understand that is like there's always room for you to take out a new $2.4 million loan with a $280,000 payment over 10 years. And you just would layer those on. You could just layer them on forever.
So how much interest do we pay a year on this borrowing? The way we are currently doing that, what is our interest every year that we take out of to pay for this funding?
Depends on our previous debt.
Well, I know, I'm just talking about now.
In 2020, you had a $2.5 million principal payment, $300,000 in interest. So
$300,000 a year we're paying in interest to
no, that's what you did this year without just your existing debt, which is only one issue. I mean, that's actually an unusual situation, but so you're at a very low interest rate. So you pay $2.5 million and you get principal $300,000 in interest. So when you look at there, the principal and interest is all here. So on $6 million over 10 years, the number is, we'll call it $900,000 in interest. So $6 million principal, $900,000 interest. I mean, if it was $3 million in principal, it'd be $450,000 in interest.
I just know there's people on the board that I've heard say, why don't we try to get debt free, save that money we pay interest, and apply that to these projects.
Well, the problem is you can't save money nowadays because the only way you can't levy to save.
Sure.
You can only levy to pay debt service. So how would you pay $1.3 million?
Yeah, but increasing the levy makes the taxes higher too. So.
Well, no, and I just want to be clear, we're not decreasing the levy. We're keeping the levy the same.
Right.
So the problem is if you can't save money because there's no mechanism to do so. I mean, you could save a little bit of money, but how long would it take to get $8 million saved in the era of levy limits?
20 years.
Yeah. So then this.
I think that's the simple math that a lot of people couldn't understand is, are we borrowing money and all this interest to do these projects, right? Why can't the government just wait a few years, save a little bit of money, like a lot of us do at our own homes, right? We have to wait a little while. Okay, we got enough money to buy new windows, right? Why do we go borrow money to change the windows when we can wait a few years and just save the money to pay for the windows? And I'm just breaking it down simple is, and I need your advice to tell us why that doesn't work.
That's a fair point. Well, first there's like this, your analogy is pretty close, right? I mean, that is how the average person works. Some people would rather pay cash for windows. Now, of course, this is so large, I think we're kind of in the point of, this is more closer to a mortgage. Like you don't pay cash for a house. You would pay cash for any driveway property. Well, I don't charge enough apparently then. But the other thing is in our architects can confirm this. You're borrowing right now. I put 3% in there. In your last loan was 2.5, 2.5.
Sure.
Construction cost inflation is going to be higher than your borrowing rate. So every year you're losing. You're basically being able to get $6 million in today's dollars. Next year, so you're going to pay interest on that $6 million, right? But next year, that $6 million a year later, it's not $6 million anymore.
I think that's important for us to understand that part of the metrics too.
Mm-hmm. Like you're chasing something you can't catch up to.
And there's one other point that goes into that. For example, with the storms, we incurred almost $1 million in general fund,
right?
Which we're still carrying until we get our reimbursement. Or what is happening with sales tax? What will happen with property tax? When we dip, where do we dip? We dip into the general fund,
right?
And that is the concern. For example, post 2008, at one time, our taxes in arrear were $5.8 billion that we carried paying out municipalities.
Yeah.
So the idea of saving, well, that's good. We also save for the other things, which unfortunately we've experienced. We've experienced the storm. We already experienced the 2008 recession. We're experiencing whatever COVID we do this year. And those are the unknowns that, the capital plan, besides keeping the levies, allows us to continue with the project, the strategy, keeping the county up. And The general fund allows for the tag group, the storm being able to carry that balance with the storms which we're still carrying, still not resolved, whatever effect COVID has, those are things which would interrupt your saving pattern if you want.
Right, I get it. I just think that's an important piece, as much as that's important. I just,
And
I mean, it's a common question, right? I get it from every
I'm sure
county.
you do.
Yeah.
to Brian's point with the cost of inflation on construction, we're still carrying, which there's a cost of money because that's money we don't have an investment. So that's another way
Is Mike, if I can get in? Is Mike, if I can get in?
Go ahead, Mike.
No, highway building, as I recall, Bremer Bank came in very much at the last minute after we had basically had lined up the bond financing and had a very attractive interest rate with pretty flexible terms. A couple of things that I think we ought to be looking at this point, and I don't recall whether that interest rate with Bremer was flexible or whether it was a fixed rate. Do you know, Chad Roberts?
It's fixed.
Fixed. 5%. Okay, and I think we could, in that with the low interest rates right now, be looking whether there would be an advantage to refinancing that and how much that might be. I don't know, maybe our speaker was talking to that point, but the other was looking at the whole, I can't see anything on the screen here as far as any numbers or anything. It would be nice to have have it on the website or whatever we could look at it or print it out. But anyway, I presume that this is all sort of in the general sense of looking at our overall position and trying to get all of our capital needs and putting some priority on them, and then looking at the best deal for financing them going ahead. I think one of the advantages of the Bremer loan was that we had a lot of flexibility as to whether we wanted to pay it down in a particular year or whatever. And I guess the other thing with Bremer is whether they're willing to renegotiate the interest rate.
I'm going to let Brian first. Now, the contract you have with Bremer allows you to prepay it, but not to refinance it.
Right.
So you can't get you can't get interest rate savings, but if you had a little extra money laying around, or you wanted to manage your debt service levy to a certain bogey, such as 2.8 million, they would allow you to do that.
Could we, prepay it, we prepay it by refinancing it by bonding would be one of the alternatives. I guess my other question is whether they're, given the capital markets right now, whether they're interested or would be interested in refinancing or negotiating, so to speak, the loan deal that we have.
Well, when you go to bond, there's associated fees with bonding. So any 2.55 coupon rate, any savings that we could possibly get on the capital market, and Brian can speak here, I think we would lose on the fees unless we bonded for an amount over what we presently owe Bremer. The rate we have from Bremer is really good. It does not allow us to refinance. So we actually do apply, and when I send these presentations to everybody, you'll see in the first year of this plan, after borrowing, if we were to borrow $6 million, we pay $1.2 million in principal back the very first year from it. We've actually been applying additional to principal because we carry such a low debt load, which is why that's given us this capacity. The point of this plan is we have no room in the levy for capital projects. Right now, if you recall, like the jail project, which is $822,000 that we push down the road, is undergoing right now, is all from the general fund. We pulled that entire amount from the general fund because we have no room in the levy for capital. As this was designed some years ago, this was the vision, and we're just kind of going over it again to make sure you guys want this to continue to be the vision. This is how we would fund the things going on, because there is no room in the levy except for debt borrowing from the capital market.
And if I may add, what's appealing to this concept right now is we just went over our goal setting where we set priorities. We talked about larger game changers. This gives you an idea that some of those game changers or priority ideas, it gets us thinking more long term. So that we're not just thinking about what's our project today, but we know, for example, in certain priorities, we're going to have an opportunity to do something in a couple of years. Don't know exactly what yet, but we know we're going to be ready to really invest in something that's going to make a big difference. If it's the appropriate type of use, capital changes, an example might be trails or parks. Those types of things could be supported by this.
Which way, in which way, bonding or bank? Well,
that's
a decision we have.
yeah, and that's a decision. It's almost like you can make it at the last second. It's just, you have two options. And I mean, I think as far as the supervisors are concerned, it really shouldn't matter. I mean, it's just where do you get your money? A group of banks, one bank, you have a security that you send your principal and interest payments one place, or do you send it to another place?
That's why we do our due diligence to see which one's more cost.
Yeah.
So are you saying that we spend a few $1 million this next year on the building, right? Whatever that number is.
Mm-hmm.
What if we do have a proposal out there that says we need to make a $5 million investment into our trail system in Polk County?
Well, that'd be 2 years at $2.4 million, basically.
Right. So you're saying if we came back, let's say we borrowed everything that's presented today that you heard.
Yeah.
And then next year you get a call from the administrator and says, hey, the county board wants to do a $5 million trail plan.
Yeah, then
What would you tell them?
Yeah, then 23. You want to borrow $5 million in 23?
Yeah, no problem.
No problem.
So
I already got you in for 2.5, 2.4.
So we'd have to wait a year or two to get you to say, yeah, I'm good. We could we phase projects in?
Yeah. So I mean, I think this is like a chunk of clay, right? And I can move it around quite a bit, and timing helps, and interest rate helps.
I'm curious on your opinion that you won't come back and say, hey guys, you spent your $5-6 million, and now looking at what you're doing, you guys are going to have to wait 10 years for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and of course, I don't want to read too much into this example, but I mean, I think the real thing is, if you can borrow $6 million in 21 and $2 million in 22, I've got you borrowing $2.4 million in 23 and $2.4 million in 24. So it would be reasonable to assume that I could work a little magic and move that other, that 2.5 into there, make it close to 5 and $5 million in 23. You just,
and then if the windows came up that they start leaking, you're going to say, hey, you guys are going to wait a few more years on the window project.
I just kind of, this is a bogey, of course, it's not precise, but it's, on average, you can borrow $2.4 million a year in any way you want. If you need to double up 1 year, that's okay. You can't double up 5 years, that's hard. It's too hard for me to move that much. Yeah. So,
but would you have any opinion on our construction project that we may be able to say maybe we just half of it this year? Do you have opinions on our financing on that?
I guess when it comes to big projects, I think that you do whatever is most efficient for you, and it doesn't pay to wait because prices just go up. And so you just do what's best for you. You can afford it.
You'll make
you
the
can
numbers.
afford it. Yeah. It's it's so small.
Small,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, if you're gonna borrow 8 million, you can do $8 million worth of projects today, 8 million, why do 8.4 million in, over time? Yeah.
And to follow that up, you do have the cost of staff time, PMA time, lawyers, associated fees with bonding. Every time you go out, you've got fees associated. So what Brian needed from me was some parameters so he could design an example schedule. And I gave him the parameters of what we knew about the facility and what our strategy for debt load was, and he designed this. He could tweak it, but to your point of if you would borrow 600,000 for windows 1 year, then you would weigh what's going to be the cost to go out to bond for that versus half of the general fund for that.
I was just gonna say that.
That's
something you could go back to a local bank and say we want
right.
600.
And windows just like the jail upgrade. Look, you guys chose to go to the general fund for that.
Right.
That may be something that you go to the general fund for, which is why we have a general fund.
Sure.
We're fortunate because we can carry $1 million incurred debt for something like the storm, year to year, whereas a lot of counties can't.
Sure.
But it's because we have a healthy general fund. And honestly, not just because I think a lot of her, but because of the work Dana and Andrea did setting all this up. They put us in this position to be able to carry forward.
Now, I guess I got one more question. The current debt service we have for the highway facility is $16 million. That's how long do we have on that? That added to our debt service for this. Have you done that? So what?
The green debt?
No, green right here. The 2027, really 2026 is when you vacate that.
Yeah.
So I guess our only question is which way do we want to go with this bond? Do we want to go to the bank? And
We're not asking that today. We're not doing it.
Well, no, I know.
I mean, I couldn't even advise you on that right now, right? I mean,
I'm just thinking that.
yeah. So I think, I think this is a real, it's a lot of information, but it's just, there has to be an introductory meeting for them. There has to be an introductory meeting for us.
You gotta set the stage. If these guys wanna spend, proposing, staff is saying, hey, however you wanna say it. I know I always say it the wrong way, but
Let me say it.
I'm gonna say it. If they want new paint and it's $6 million, that's what they do is comment.
Well, that's another issue.
If we're gonna spend $6 million on painting the building, they want to make sure we know that we can afford it. So that's why you're here to make that feel good.
Mm-hmm.
That
I hope you feel good.
we're good.
Well, I hope you take away from this work that's been put in, it's not just about this facility remodel.
I know
This is the plan about how we continue the county forward.
And I appreciate it. I tell you what, I am very proud, very comfortable of the way staff has done this. Dana, Andrea, the current staff, I'm more than impressed. I am more than impressed of everybody that's on our team to keep this going. Why wouldn't you feel good about where we're at? So I'm not saying I don't want to change the building.
Thank God you're doing it right.
Right.
All right, we're gonna call the presentation over then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're getting out of control.
Yeah, I mean, actually,
You want it? I want that.
And I will email this policy for
We'll get this email.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is very helpful.
All right.
Yeah, honestly, I've always heard about that. They can't come in without me, and I don't have a person come in without them. Like, you need to understand what you can afford. Because everyone wants, most people want as much as they can get, based on certain criteria. Right. Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brian.
Here goes the next one.
do have a handout so you can doodle on.
Hey, he's on top of it. He's on your right side, Nelson.
Gonna show them all up, aren't you? Right, I guess I know who's getting lunch today. Just carry them home.
No worry, Chris, I got you.
Good morning. At the last meeting, there was some questions, and the committee requested that some information be brought back to them. So I put together a little PowerPoint to show you. So the first one that was asked was, I gave it a cost per levy per resident on there and what that cost was, and the question was, well, what's the cost per household? So the cost per unit for the last couple of years out here, as you can see in this slide in 16, the number of housing units we have is 24,553 in Polk County. So in 2016, the cost to operate the recycling center was $9.48 per household. 2017, it was $3.24. Back up again, $9.28 in 18. Back down to $4.63 in 2019.
Why the up and down curve?
It's because of the cost of how much levy we use each year.
How much levy?
How much levy is used to operate the recycling center.
That doesn't include the amounts that we get from the state.
This is the operation of the recycling center. Total cost, including the grant. Including the grant, including all revenues, including all expenditures. The top line levy fund used, that's what was used to balance out the operation of the recycling center.
So we've had to borrow from the general fund to keep it up.
Correct. Correct, every year.
So in the last 5 years, how much have we borrowed from the general fund that operated for, let's say, the last, we have 4 years, right?
We have 4 years here, you could see.
Obviously 16 and 8.
As you can see, it fluctuates a little bit depending on needs in recycling. Our average recycling that we do is approximately 1,700 tons of recycling go through our facility every year. That number's been kind of consistent. The commodities that come through, be it flamingo, cardboard, appliances, electronics, kind of shift differently as they go through. But that's kind of what levy can use.
$650,000.
About $650,000
in the last 4 years.
Correct.
So over 10 years, we could easily spend $1.5 million every 10 years
operating the levy.
Operating that without any additional.
Without changing the program currently, this is what's.
And that's the way it's historically been running.
Correct, historically been running. Next slide, Chad. The next one was asked, Supervisor Duncanson asked about what about a fee? Well, I took that fee per housing unit, not per developed parcel, simply because a developed parcel could mean someone put a chicken coop on there. And you might have one house that has several properties that would end up paying that fee several times. So with that, I put a scenario with different fees. If you had a $5 fee, it was $122,000 a year. If you had $12, it was $294,000 a year. And again, this is only on housing units, not businesses. Per our ordinance, businesses are not to use our drop boxes. Our drop boxes are for residential recycling only. Businesses are supposed to bring them to the recycling center. I'll touch base on that again with that. With this, on the bottom line there, it talks about the levy use. Been doing research on this, and it's been conflicting research a little bit, that if we impose the fee, since we didn't do the special assessment when we started recycling, that would lower our levy, which would lower levies, available funds for other departments if we put this in place. Emails yesterday from Department of Revenue said, no, recycling is one of the protected classes, functions that would not lower your levy to do it. So I need to do a little more research on that to get you some solid answers on there. So what I had right now on the slide said it would lower the limit. What I got in the email yesterday said it wouldn't lower the levy. So that's still an option out there. So that's what I kind of went on that with you. So the statements on the impact levy on there.
So we can't add additional dollars. It's not like we can increase the levy. It's still whatever we're taking out of our levy is still coming out of our levy.
Right, there's a caveat that says if you're already using levy dollars to operate your recycling system, you can enact a fee without having to lower your levy for everyone else. If that makes sense. If I'm saying that right, Maria? If not, please chime in and go for it. Next slide, Chad. One of the other options with fees is naturally a tipping fee. A tipping fee for like Waterman's to bring in our tonnage, that they bring in approximately 400 tons of material per year to our facility, and if we charge them $35, it'd be a $14,000 increase in revenues. If we charge them $70, it would be $28,000 in revenue. Folks around us, you know, these tipping fees change from facility to facility, be it Baldwin and the other ones, anywhere from $30 to $150 a ton for commercial recyclables coming into the facility. This is a good avenue, I think, approach to look at changing our program to do this.
They have, at this school, vice versa, do we bring stuff to them, or do they just mostly bring stuff to us?
We bring stuff. They bring stuff to us only. We pay for them to take our trash away of the 20% that's typically contaminated debris. So this is an avenue I'd like to look at.
This would be an addition. So
this would be additional revenue.
So the public is already paying to operate it, and now the public is going to pay again to have higher tipping fees. Correct?
This is for businesses or commercial haulers are coming in.
Yeah, but the commercial haulers, where are they getting that debris from?
From the residents.
From me.
From the residents.
So they're going to charge me more when I pick up a dumpster, and you're going to charge me for also the recycling.
Come back around that fee could come back around the other
we
side.
all pay for that extra.
Right. What their fees are currently for them picking it up and dumping it for free now, I don't have those numbers.
Sure. Okay.
Because, you know, we're trying to control, the thought was to control this more at the recycling center, because in our ordinance of recycling drop boxes that we have all around the county, and next slide there, Chad. This, I don't know if you can blow it up, but this is where we have all our drop boxes and how many days we have, where we pick them up, how many boxes we have with that. Now again, our ordinance says recycling is for residential units only, not business, not non-residential units. But if you go down to the bottom, go up a little bit, this is what I spoke about before on that. These businesses have drop boxes. Some of them they purchase themselves, but we pick up at no cost. Other ones request one, we bring them down there and pick them up. Some are seasonal with the fireworks factory. But you see there's 3 that own their own. Again, our ordinance says our drop boxes aren't for recycling. It's another thing we need to massage in our, or update in our ordinance, that are we going to allow these businesses to have our own drop boxes? Or do we say, no, we're going to take, you know, our ordinance is written that it's only for residential recycling. Businesses need to provide it through a hauler. So that's another rewrite of the ordinance that eventually I'd like input on.
So are we not even thinking about doing away with the recycling center?
That is part of the equation, is which direction does the board want to go, and this is all information for you guys to make that decision. Now that we're talking about the recycling center itself, a question, you know, what are capital needs there? Capital needs have not been done there in the last 10 years besides the roof. So I had the report is in your handout there from FOF. I had them look at what would it take to update our facility to make it more efficient, a little longer tipping sorting line on that. And these are the estimated capital costs. These could definitely be phased in. Right now, if you go down to the recycling center, our facility is full. I mean, it's as much can come in there. It's 15 feet high, struck around the edges. It's full. This is what the cost would be phased in. Would be about $1 million, $600,000 to $1 million upgrade to expand the tipping floor a little bit. What that doesn't include is parking lots, current overhead doors that may need maintenance, that could be handled underneath the capital improvement project for maintenance.
Is the building big enough?
The building would have to be expanded, and that's included in those numbers.
And where at? Oh, and each one of those.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be more extended, it'd be more in this line item and, line items.
Have building expansions in them.
To bump it back, to get the longer tipping flow and a longer line. So there is capital needs to go for that phase. With that. So that's kind of an overview. One of the other things I wanted to point out with this, and I don't have a slide on this one, is the state is looking into recycling also, because statewide recycling is underfunded because our grants haven't moved since 1999. The Legislative Audit Bureau is conducting a statewide audit of recycling. For comments, they began to draft this report. They're still writing that report, so it's not available at this time. Second activity that DNR is going into is their full study on how well the recycling programs are working compared to what's going into our landfills. And that report will not be available until 2021 with that. So they're kind of looking at two phases of that. How is the funding stream doing to date? The DNR is looking at how successful is our recycling programs.
And when you talk about the DNR is looking at is that just county-owned recycling programs or everyone's recycling?
Everyone, recycling overall.
Overall. Are they going to make a recommendation as far as, and you're going to say probably you don't know that, but what's the percentage of the amount of counties doing what we do compared to what St. Croix County does? Is the trend for counties to jump into the recycling bigger, or is the trend to use private industry to manage?
Right now, it's kind of status quo as far as who does recycling, who has their own facilities. I believe it was Portage County. They went through a phase where they contracted out their recycling center to a private company to run their recycling center. That went over several years due to loss of, I shouldn't say loss of control. What they found was it wasn't cost effective that way. The county board decided to build a new recycling center. It was either Portage or Adams County.
So we have 72 counties. How many counties have their own recycling facility out of the counties in the state?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. I know there's.
Can you do it by next month? Give us a list of the counties
that
do it their own and subcontract out.
Mm-hmm.
Be helpful.
You know, there's a couple different hybrids. Dunn County has a transfer station they operate. Barron County has the incinerator. Pierce County has a MRF, a recycling center similar.
Maybe you
like
can kind of break that down for us.
What they each are.
Yeah, kind of. So then at least we have something to compare it to. I just like to know the trend. Are there, is the trend to move into more recycling, or is the trend to let? It seems like it's a private business thing. It's like you said, how hard it is to manage, keep everything going right, knowing the commodity markets. You know, it's kind of one of the it's a specialty business.
It's a specialty thing that's mandated, for
the line workers, right?
Right. And it's an interesting subject the more you get into it. Right. To really look into it, when you go back to the 50s, and I want to use the example of a container. Back in the 50s, we had very little recyclable material out there. And the reason being is the container was property of the manufacturer. We all paid a deposit. We all they all put the bottles in the end. You they refilled them, you got them back again, you got your deposit back. As the container became lighter, plastics, all that, the ownership of that container switched to the consumer. And after the consumer's done with it, they don't want it anymore, so they're just going to dump it. And that's how kind of recycling became more of an issue, was the transfer of that container from the manufacturer to the consumer. And now it's trying to deal with how do we get rid of that, utilize that container. So it's an interesting subject.
I just talked to a restaurant owner the other day who said, for all these years we've been moving into plates, glasses, silverware to wash, right? We're supposed to recycle. Now with COVID, put all that stuff on the shelves, put it away. We want everything to be thrown away. So he says our business model is flipped overnight. Are we gonna go back? I don't know, or when that day we go back is, but now, it's like, I had to buy more trash cans and we're throwing everything away.
And we found that there's many businesses utilizing our drop boxes.
Right.
And, you know, where they're not supposed to by the ordinance, but, you know, you dump the cardboard on the tipping floor and there's half of the bin is Little Debbie's container boxes that was stocking the store shelves and stuff. So it's, there's
it's hard to probably be able to have any control over that.
right, unless you have an attendant there looking at every box, it's very hard to control that. We've looked at the cost savings of going to larger bins for fuel costs and stuff. Naturally, the investment there is you have to phase in bigger trucks to haul them and bigger bins to get them. Our bins now run around $5,000 to $6,000, depending if they have a center divider. But
show us those numbers, Mo, on what the facility costs. Are you able to show us too what the investment is for the county all in for replacing trucks every 5-10 years? But just to me, it's always nice to say a 10-year snapshot.
Yes, we have a 5-year snapshot of replacing our CIP.
Because that would be good to have that, to really let the public know, this is really what it cost us. This is the money we have to put into our program to manage it. You know, this is how much every year we put into payroll, buildings, equipment. This is where we're short this much. Real simple. And then if we want to get to making this thing work better, you know, are we talking that the county puts this in kind of $1 million, $2-3 million a year? You know, I mean, I think it would help.
The investment, a truck is about 90,000 plus. You know, I think over the next 5 years in our CIP, we have approximately 260,000 in there.
$260,000
to phase in, you know, with
5 years.
truck replacement, you know, unit. That includes some building costs, smaller trucks, forklifts, skid steers, naturally are expensive.
You would go bigger. Do you need more employees though, or do you have the right staff? The staff could handle going bigger.
I think bigger would be, getting bigger in a longer sorting line would speed the line up.
Sure,
so that you would be more efficient getting your recyclables, where a natural plastic, we can get 3 times as much for that bale versus a commingled bale. We don't have the capacity to separate those 2 plastics out now. So instead of getting $150 a bale, we're getting $40 a bale. You know, so stuff like that would rein in efficiencies.
I believe we're missing the big picture here too. Looking forward, are we in the business to be in business, county? No. Again, there's that question. Everlasting question. Should we be in business to be losing money? Business to be in business, the countywide, I think the county's in business to serve the people. Yeah, this is part of it, but we go at it at a different angle. And I know I fully respect your questions, Chris, but we need to look at the big picture. Is this something we can afford to do without dipping in the general fund every year? Because the CIP is going to keep going up. We've got $500,000 to $1 million in applications that we need to update the facility. And we don't know what those costs would be 10 years down the road.
Well, my opinion, if it was just my opinion, is absolutely not in the recycling business, running a facility. I mean, I know what it's like to run a small business. You have to change constantly. You have employee issues. You got to know what direction to go with the wind. And this just seems like a very complicated business at the end, right? And to manage it and to have your time, how much time do you really spend on this, or having that expert just, you know, being on this? I'm for a recycling program. I'm for a more robust recycling program. I'm for everyone paying the same for the program. But I'm not for running a facility in any way, shape, or means. If we were going to vote today to say, let's get rid of the facility, I'd be the first guy to stand up and say, we shouldn't be in this business. If you wanted my opinion today. Yeah. But I don't know where this goes. Yeah. You know, I don't know if that's something we need as a committee. If you wanted me to make a motion today to say, let's get out of the recycling facility, I make that motion.
second that? I will. There we go. We got to start a resolution to unwind. Now there's, Chair, would you take a motion?
No, because we don't have enough on our agenda to say that we were gonna take action on it. Today, it's just an update and analysis of what would happen if they charged 12.
Sure, and I still, that resolution that we think Great County has to, that was on the last packet from last month, right, was, I thought it was very, very informational, very good.
I would like to pay a professional to run it and to help us do a better job recycling with businesses, with every homeowner's having a drop at their curb. You know, that's what I would be for.
Is that cost effective for us that we still own? I mean, you're talking about still owning it?
No. But we have to manage a recycling program. We have to say, this is what we expect. If you're a municipality or a town in this community, Polk County, this is what you're going to be required, that everything has to be recycled. If you want to be a hauler in our community and haul people's waste, I don't know why, if you're a business or a resident, why we wouldn't have, just like we say what our shoreline ordinance is or what any other ordinance is, that everyone has to recycle. Because right now, not everyone recycles. I would say most people don't recycle. You know, out of the 45,000 people that live here, we had 500 or 600 or 300 people say, yeah, I love it, I want to do it. Where's the other 44,500 people? What are they doing with their trash? That'd be my point. And I would like to see our committee have that on our agenda, that we have an opportunity to actually move this forward and start moving the ball to unwind this. I would like to have a vote on that at some point.
All right, are you making a note that that gets on our next agenda?
Thanks, Mo.
You bet.
All right. Thank you. How about update on the COVID? Chad?
Cost-wise, as far as out-of-pocket expenses, have stayed pretty stable. We do have sales tax comparisons for 2 prior years, and we're down for April, but not down as much as we expected, which is a good sign. I think we're down around 7%, which is about half of where they thought we'd be down. Property tax is an unknown. We'll start to see in July as property tax collection come in. Where we are, but sales tax, interestingly enough, for Polk, Burnett, Washburn, Barron, Pierce, interesting that we fared better than a lot of the state did. And talking to the analysts, I think a lot of it is construction materials, yard materials, the big box stores, the certifying, that kind of stuff. Not saying we're out of the woods, I'm just saying it could be worse.
Yeah, that's what I'm glad you brought that up, Chad. You can see the people just coming up there and roads. I think that assessment that sales tax revenue was going to drop 14-15%.
Now, having said that, it dropped a whole lot more than the assessment in other counties. So.
Well, sure.
Other counties are definitely taking a hit, right?
Yeah, they're worse than our original.
Sure.
Okay, really bad hit. Worried about the furlough for county, several things. So.
Is it because we're a border county probably that we have in their state had a little more control in our state?
Based on the talks I had with PMA and some others, they think a lot of that is based on the border traffic, the people fixing up their cabins, people doing yard work, you know, having big box stores serving a more area helps. Sure, those kind of things. It would be speculation about if we drew people over from. You could speculate what. Sure.
That's good news.
All right, anyone else like to comment? Good. on. I had asked to have the possible change in the meeting time put on the agenda. Today worked out okay. 9 o'clock was done, so we could start our meeting today at 10. Is everyone good with the start, with our start time? I suppose for you, if we went later in the afternoon, you would kind of come here in the morning, leave, and then have to come back.
I'm on both.
Yeah,
And so are you gonna be now, so.
well, I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, you gotta find it.
Oh,
Yeah, you were appointed during the break. Someone appointed you.
Oh, you did.
Yes.
all right.
Your own personal interest from us.
So
This might work out good for you.
is everyone okay then that we just leave the time at 10?
Is Mike and
Mike,
Ryan
you
okay with
okay and
it?
leave it at 10?
Yes.
Brand's good, Mike.
I'm okay.
All right, so I'm gonna leave it at 10 for now. All right, our next is, and I'm not positive how this got on here. I got called on it, but we had something in our minutes about agenda review and, reviewing policy. So did we want to review the travel policy?
I think we already did it.
That was kind of.
That was because I was with the chair, and the supervisor asked some questions about what the rules were, and I think the questions got answered, and I think Chad gave us, or someone gave us an update on what our policies are, and it's all okay.
All right, yeah. We don't need anything. Agenda review of financial policy reviews.
Mr. Chair, right now, I think on the financial policies, nomenclature, limits, we just discussed things like that. So probably next month, yes, the financial policy suggested edits we can do this along with personnel policies, but right now I don't have it. Takes a little longer.
Mr. Chair, this is Mike. Both for the financial policy review, but the presentations we had today, it would be so helpful if we could get the handouts a day or two before the meeting. It would really facilitate being able to understand them and try to ask some intelligent questions.
We just discussed that earlier, Mike, and you were gonna get that to us next time.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I said, we discussed that at our next, you must have missed it, but we are gonna get that information now on the meetings.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
All right, so we'll just have it on our next agenda. Chad, maybe you could help get it on the next agenda.
Yes, sir, I'll take care of it.
All right. All right, is there a resolution 2120?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there's a resolution. I think Judge Anderson wants to speak to the resolution. It's in your packet. I'm also placing it on the screen now.
Can we get a motion to bring it to the floor? So
I'll
we
make
can-
that motion to bring it to the floor for discussion.
Judge, you can sit through all of this. Yes. Sorry, I didn't.
Does anyone want to second that? Motion to bring it to the floor?
I'll second that. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Stand it, the corporate version C is Polycom systems in branch 1, branch 2, and an upgrade at the jail. The Polycom is basically the CPU. It's the brains of the computer systems in our courtrooms. They were end of life, I believe it was end of last year. One of the problems we've been having with our Polycoms, they also run our video whenever we try to call the jail to do a remote hearing. We're rebooting most of the time because when we try to call the jail apparently doesn't recognize our call. Also, our Supreme Court on May 22nd instituted a rule that we're supposed to have a reopening plan for both trials and for reopening overall our courtrooms. And we use Zoom now, at least the state provided us with Zoom. The problem that we have, our current polycoms, when we try to run Zoom through the polycoms, there are issues. Sometimes we black out, sometimes you can't. And the idea is that the new polycoms and the two branches should help to alleviate some of this issue. And again, that's a reference from technology to me. I'm not a technology specialist, so I can't say that it'll do everything I'm being told it will do. And also branch 1 is the treatment court branch. And right now treatment court is being run by way of WebEx, and I understand Zoom. The idea is once the polycoms are fixed, hopefully that fixes our technical issues, and then we can create our reopening plans, submit them to the chief judge of the district. They can go to basically the state, and also that would allow treatment court participants to start coming back into the courthouse. And as Judge Bona stated, treatment court participants have kind of fallen off the rails with COVID. Basically, being out in the community isn't quite as sitting in front of the judge and having the parties there. So we've lost answerability. Basically, the program isn't as effective as it should be. So the corporate version of the CJCC finds that helping treatment court, which is what branch 1 does, and the need for the polycom and the reopening, it's worth the $9,000 to reopen. Plus that helps other people who come to our courtroom. For jury trials, we're looking at using 2 courtrooms because we have to distance. And with regard to distancing, we need the video in the one room to observe the jurors sitting in the other room. The social distance is part of our plan. The idea, again, is this should help us technologically. I think Barron County just recently put in new polycoms, and that helped with a number of their issues. And I understand that right now, polycoms for us to purchase and install is less than the cost of what Barron paid for the equivalent just to purchase. So we've got a decrease in value. So CJCC is willing to donate $9,000 towards the cost of the project because it also fits within treatment court and the like, and cover branch 1.
The total cost of the project is about $23,000. So the treatment court covers roughly 40% of it, or the CJCC donation covers roughly 40%. That was unbudgeted, although we need it for COVID. We'll try to submit it under the grant. I don't anticipate we'll get it looking at the grant because it's a repair of an existing system. But Vince has authorized it, and we'll do it elsewhere in the budget if we have to. We are scheduled to have it up and running the first week of August, so the judges can resume their court operations.
But if there's any questions about the donation or the like, or the basis for it, I'm here to answer that.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I think it's more for Chad. In terms of the 501c, we, as county, give them, they're in our budget to give them money. Correct?
No, the 501c3, we removed them in 2018 when the CJCC was voted to transfer to county. The 501c3 ceased to operate as far as running CJCC. The judge and the board have had remaining donated funds, and we've had a really good partnership since then. They paid for the bathroom installation in the jail, which allowed us to do the drug testing in the jail. They paid for hardware. We recently did a hardware donation for programs in the jail, new technology in the jail, and then they've also passed this on to us from the remaining funds. We do not fund the 501c3 at all anymore. That will be adopted to CJCC.
Question is answered. I just wanted to do any county funds involved. Other than what you said.
That'll be the remaining of the 22,000 for this upgrade.
Yeah.
And I'm also here to tell you that we've now looked at closeout, talked to our firm that will handle our final conclusion of our taxes and the like, and actually we can increase it to 10,000 is what I'm here to tell you that we can donate as well if you accept it at 10 instead of 9.
So we'll need an amendment then?
I'm all for more money. So
yeah, we can't do it here though. That'll have to be
Yeah, we can't change the resolution.
Right.
But that can be amended.
I assume it's.
I read the resolution.
And we have discussed 9, but I have since visited with our accounting firm because we have to pay for the preparation of the final taxes for this year. So that's a cost. Any closing costs that we have when we shut down, because we're looking at shutting down by the end of July in order to finally close out so we don't have to do another year of tax prep. And we also had a return of some money for insurance that we had, but we canceled that because we didn't need it anymore. So I can tell you that we're sitting at about 13,700 approximately right now. When I talked to Mr. Roberts, I was looking at some of the money back where we sat. I believe we talked about that. I also need to find out what the accounting firm needed. With that, with closeout, I'm here to tell you we can go to 10 instead of 9. I apologize I didn't know that sooner, but I've been working to figure out all final bills, pay them so we can close out.
What do you think he has to do with this? We're all good then with the motion in the second?
Yeah, unless they want to amend the motion to include a recommendation.
No, that's not what we're talking about. I'll make a recommendation. We said it with a recommendation, not just the motion. Right?
A motion to recommend.
Make motion to recommend. I'll second that.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
All
you.
right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, how about, we've gotten quite a few subject matters already for the next meeting. I guess I'm probably just keep. If anyone has anything, or you know, to the clerk or the company. How about our work plan? Are we staying on schedule on our work plan? Anyone add anything? Working on it?
I would just say that the next step in the goal setting is the staff, division heads, and key leaders on their teams have met to put together potential target areas for the next step of our goal setting. So at the next board meeting from 3 to 5, all the supervisors will be there. You'll see what the staff has put together that says, here's what we've been doing, and here's some things related to your priorities that we will be doing. No, but what I'm saying is it will go, once the boards will refer to committees, like General Government Committee, which will affect your work plan going forward. Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I think let supervisors just fill that gap in during the month, getting a hold of the chair to, if we want something on the agenda, you want us to call you or do you want us to just?
Well, I think they've been just calling the clerk and then the clerk will set
Something, okay.
I'm not opposed to anything on the agenda so we can discuss.
Gotcha.
I don't even care whether who put it on there.
Someone on this committee could put something on
No.
the agenda during the month.
You know, we can discuss it. If it's nothing, it's nothing. If it is, yeah.
Mr. Chair, to the work plan annual audit is on July's because of the audit being done virtually and some slowdown in the highway closing to complete the audit. That's going to have to be moved to August, may not be. So it'll be a busy August, provided I can get everything right off.
All right. Do we need anything on the line for you or?
I could, I think we want closed session. Yeah, that would be closed session. I'll make a motion for closed session. And we have, if I may ask, we have a guest that's been sitting here waiting, also in closed session. Could we move him ahead of? Yeah. The line for discussion for Resco. Yep.
With the exception of Supervisor Pritchard and Supervisor Duncanson, can everybody else drop off, please?
So do we have anything else we can do in open session? there's comments made here, be opposed?
Yes.
You're just asking that he could be pulled in a full session.
Well, and to go ahead of the line for it.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't have to wait.
I think he's on there. So
Second. Wonderful session.
Can I bring him in?
Motion carried. We're in open session.
Sure. We already did. We're rushing to go back and forth. We're in open.
Okay.
Yes. So this committee has decided to support the second option. They've done that unanimously, so it's a consensus, and it will be at the next county board meeting. We'll have a closed session on the county board meeting so that if there are, is debate or questions that are handled in closed session. So the information provided, if the county board wants to hear about it, can be done in closed session.
Great. So 21st of this month?
That's correct. It starts at 6. Because it's of the WebEx, it might behoove us to put a closed session towards the end, even though, just so people aren't waiting and hopping back on in the middle and thinking maybe now they're back in open session, so.
That's fine, just roll in late.
Yeah, I can give you an update as to when we think you'll be needed.
All right, I'll put it on the calendar for the 21st. Thank you for the consideration. I do appreciate it. And once we get through this, we would love it if you would come over to the plant. We'd love to show you. We're proud of what we're doing. We're doing something very unique, and we'd love to show it to you. Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Aye.
Carried. We're in open session. Make a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to say a few things before we adjourn. What the second is, can we shut Masters up? He's done. Let's not say that. Don't they want to know what's going to be on the stage? I withdraw my motion. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that.
All right, we're gonna take comments then from supervisors' comments?
Well, this supervisor has a comment.
All right.
And I don't know, most of you know here that I am resigning from the board effective July 21st. I'm moving to sold my house in 4 days, can you believe it? I've enjoyed working with all of you. I've already given the speech once in executive committee, but.
Who says now?
It was Brian Masters.
Brian?
Yep. Sorry, Mike, it's not me.
Oh, who is it?
It's me, Brian Masters. I'm resigning as of August 21st.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, July.
After how many years?
12 years.
4? Is that all? Okay.
Is that all? Well, that's been a long time for
Well,
me.
I thought you had more history, but anyway. No.
I do have a lot of history in that 12 years, trust me.
Finished his sentence and now he's getting paroled.
Well, we wish you well.
House, and we're moving to Florida, and we'll be living up here in the summer. So,
we wish you well.
Thank you.
Best wishes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Nelson.
Thank you for your years of service.
Thank you. Chairman Nelson is going to be appointing a person to replace me on the General Government Committee. Can I say that?
Well, it's not official.
It's not official.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to leave that with the executive
All right.
now.
All right.
Board, yeah.
There will be somebody that will be placing me on this committee, and they will do a wonderful job. And I appreciate all their work, and I've appreciated everybody's work that I've worked with over the years. Vince, Dana, Leah, Chad, thank you. I'll have to do this comment. I don't think everybody knows. All right, now I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
We'll stand adjourned at 1:14.